Parting ways is universally poignant, particularly when bidding farewell to those who have passed on, and even more so when it involves a cherished pet saying goodbye to its human. From extraordinarily loyal dogs to a horse paying its respects to its best friend, this video will take you through some of the most heart-wrenching farewells between pets and their owners. Let's journey through these emotional moments together. The giraffe's farewell. Giraffes are difficult to compare to the pets we're used to. Despite its relatively calm temper, it's still a wild animal that's not at all accustomed to active interaction with humans. However, even wild animals can understand grief and have compassion when they see illness. A touching scene occurred at the Rotterdam Zoo in the Netherlands when a terminally ill employee who had worked there for 25 years, Mario, was brought to the place of work so he could say goodbye to his colleagues. His job was to clean the cages, and so over the years he became friends with all the animals in the park. The request was fulfilled by a charitable organization which fulfills the last wishes of dying people. The sick man had to be carried on his hospital bed because not only was he no longer able to walk, but he was barely able to move. Mario knew that the end was near, so he has to be taken to the giraffe's enclosure so he could say goodbye to his beloved animals. One of the first to say goodbye to Mario, who was terminally ill with cancer, was the oldest giraffe in the enclosure. When the bed was brought closer, the animal came up to Mario and kissed him, pressing its nose into his face. The moment of farewell was so touching that many of those present wept. Mario barely moved and spoke with great difficulty, but words were superfluous, his face said it all. Molly. One of the saddest things in the world is to lose a loved one and not be able to say goodbye. This sweet dog, Molly, was given that chance. The hospital staff was allowed to walk the dog to the room where its beloved owner was dying. Ryan Jensen was admitted to the hospital with a brain hemorrhage, and the doctors were fighting for his life, but there was nothing they could do. Molly didn't understand what was happening, and Ryan's family had already been told that their beloved son and brother would never recover. After a short negotiation with the paramedics, Molly was allowed into the room. This video is hard to watch. The whole family gathered around the bed to say goodbye to Ryan, while Molly is still desperately reaching for him, as if trying to wake him up. According to Jensen's relatives, he and his dog had been best friends for years. It's sad to watch the story of such great friendships come to an end. Dida. This little chihuahua had spent its whole life with its owner. When the woman passed away, the dog was confused and simply didn't know how to go on. Teresa, the daughter of the deceased, often visits her mother's grave. For Dida, these are happy hours when it can again spend some time with its dear friend. The dog unmistakably finds the very same tombstone and stays close to it for a long time. Dida's previous owner died in the hospital of a heart attack, but even within the walls of the hospital, the loyal doggy stayed by her side. Now the beloved dog can only visit her grave, but it often refuses to leave. Despite the snow and cold, Dida is willing to sit by the rock for hours. If this isn't the best proof of a true friendship between dogs and humans. Sully. In 2018, former United States President George H.W. Bush passed away. Many people showed up for the farewell ceremony. There were diplomats, veterans, and military personnel, but the saddest creature in the room was Sully, the former president's service dog. The animal was surprisingly calm. The dog seemed to understand something. So it stood motionless for most of the ceremony, staring at the flag-covered coffin. Many of those who did not know George H.W. Bush were surprised by the Labrador's presence, but loved ones knew that Bush and Sully were more than just an owner and a pet. The former president suffered from Parkinson's disease, and Sully often replaced his hands literally. It would hand him things, support him, and even call for help if it realized its strength was not enough. It's difficult to overestimate the joy George H.W. Bush's beloved dog gave to him. Do not think that only dogs and giraffes are capable of sincere compassion and loyalty. In this video, you'll see other animals that were sad to say goodbye to their owners and were literally depressed when their owners passed away. Stay tuned to see even more heartbreaking goodbyes between pets and their owners, which will not leave you indifferent. Let's move on. Hawkeye. A dog named Hawkeye was the service dog of a Marine named John Wilson. When Hawkeye's owner tragically died in Iraq, John's body was transported to his homeland to give the soldier a proper burial. The dog was also brought to the farewell ceremony. Many words were spoken and many tears were shed, but the most heartbreaking sight was Hawkeye that laid down at the foot of his owner's coffin at the very beginning of the ceremony and did not move until the very end of the ceremony. Though we cannot know how the dog felt at that moment, one look at it is enough to understand that it was deeply grieved for the loss of its friend. Now Hawkeye is living with a new family, as John had wished in his will. In its new home with 3 Labradors, in addition to the owners, the dog seems happy. Does it remember its first owner? Who knows? But dogs are clearly much more complicated creatures than we think. Caesar. The death of an owner is a tremendous shock to any pet. The animal can become confused, aggressive, and sad, but those around it will be unable to help it and make amends for the loss. The case of a dog named Caesar can be considered special. The death of its owner literally stunned the animal. When Mehmet Ilhan was taken to the hospital to find out the cause of his pain, Caesar refused to eat. When it became clear that Mehmet's life could not be saved, the family began planning a funeral. In the procession, the dog was given a special place to say goodbye to its beloved owner. Caesar sat motionless beside the coffin while speeches were made. The family of the deceased had hoped that the dog would feel a little better after the funeral, but the animal was grieving too much. Caesar was adopted by Ali, Mehmet's son. The man soon realized that the dog had made a habit of running away from home every day and was coming back only in the evening. On one such day, Ali decided to follow the fugitive and was amazed to find it running away to sit on the deceased owner's grave. Even after his death, the dog had not abandoned its habits and still decided to spend time near its dear friend. Sinbad. Animals are capable of feeling deeply, but this is not just true of cats, dogs, or giraffes. For some reason, of all the popular pets, parrots have the hardest time experiencing the death of their owner. These birds often become depressed and stop making contact with the world around them, and in particularly severe cases, that's even have to prescribe special antidepressants for them. This is the story of Sinbad the African gray parrot. The touching moments were caught on camera only miraculously. When the owner with whom the parrot was inseparable for 25 years became seriously ill, Sinbad moved with her to the hospital and did not leave the elderly woman for a moment. Sinbad was very talkative before its owner's illness, but when things got bad, it fell silent. Specialists believe this was a reaction to the severe stress the animal was undergoing. Sereno. 34-year-old Wagner de Lima Figueiredo and his horse Sereno were almost inseparable. The bond only broke when Figueiredo was tragically killed in a car accident. The deceased family and friends organized a traditional funeral procession, but Wagner's brother quickly realized that someone was missing from it. When Sereno was brought to the procession, there was a truly heartbreaking scene that left no one present indifferent. As the car with Wagner's coffin pulled up, the horse suddenly became anxious. It came to the car, sniffed the wood from all sides, and suddenly fell silent, resting its head on the lid of the coffin. All the way to the cemetery, the horse walked beside the hearse in which the owner was being carried. Sereno was constantly snorting and shifting its hooves indiscriminately. It seemed that the death of its owner had grieved it so deeply that it didn't know how to go on. Ringo and Sugar. If a hopelessly ill person cannot be helped by doctors, it doesn't mean that their last days cannot be alleviated. When Vietnam War veteran Roberto Gonzalez found out that both of his kidneys were failing, it was clear he wouldn't live much longer. The man decided to meet his 2 adored horses, Ringo and Sugar, as his final wish. They're the only horses in the state of Texas officially registered as assistants for people with disabilities. In the last years of his life, Gonzalez often practiced with them. Not surprisingly, he wanted to see his faithful friends one more time before he died. Fortunately, the hospital staff and the man's family were able to quickly arrange a visit. The reunion took place right on the hospital's patio. Eyewitnesses reported that Gonzalez felt very bad, but as soon as the horses appeared, He opened his eyes and smiled. Always there. I warn you right up front, this story ended well. Not all the stories in this video can be sad, right? And this story is about how well dogs sense when people need their help and support. Some dog owners even claim that their pets can read minds at a distance. There's no way to prove it, but listen to this story about something that just recently happened in Peru. This man was clearly having a fun night. He drank too much alcohol, fell, and cracked his head open. The wound was serious and passers-by immediately called an ambulance, but when the paramedics arrived, it became clear that the man's two loyal dogs had no intention of leaving him, even on the way to the hospital. The paramedics had to leave the dogs in the car as they showed them they would look after their owner. The dogs followed him all the way to the hospital, the waiting room, the emergency room, and even the front door of the hospital ward. In spite of serious injury, the man kept an eye on his pets and even smiled to cheer them up. Unfortunately, we don't know all the details of the story, but one thing is certain: the man recovered. After all, how could it be otherwise when you're so welcome home? That's all, guys. Do you have a pet? And if so, who is it? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching and see you later.